Welcome back to the Scotti-BYTE channel, and this is Scott. So here's a little bit of a commercial. I appreciate each and every one of you that subscribes and likes on my channel. And by the way, if you have anything that you'd like to see, go ahead and drop me a line and we'll see what we can do. All right, so today we're going to talk about self-hosted QR codes. QR codes, or quick response codes, are two-dimensional barcodes invented in 1994 by the Japanese company Denso Wave, and it was originally used for labeling auto parts. Static QR codes cannot be edited once they're created. However, there's something called a dynamic QR code that can be edited because they link through the site that created them. And that's one of the reasons why we want to self-host our QR code generator, not only so that we can generate codes, but so that our dynamic codes can be changed on our own site. So PHP Dynamic QR Code is a self-hosted QR code management application which allows the creation and management of both static and dynamic QR codes. And PHP Dynamic QR Code can create text codes, email, phone, SMS, GPS location, calendar event, bookmarks, Wi-Fi, and even other types of codes. Basically, it's a pretty broad range of applications that you can use your QR codes for. So many image formats are supported with this program. In addition to that, they have lots of different colors, resolutions or precision, and sizes of the actual QR codes. All of these are supported and selectable through the program, as we'll see. And then this app was created in 2020, and the latest release is October 2023 as of this tutorial, really only about 2 weeks ago. So this is a currently supported application. So let's go take a look at how to self-host our own QR code generator. So here's my self-hosted PHP Dynamic QR code generator login screen, and I'm going to go ahead and log in with my self-hosted Bitwarden. And if you haven't used Bitwarden, you might want to check out my video on the channel describing how to use or self-host your own Bitwarden. So here we have a main screen here. We're looking at the dashboard, and it's saying that I have a total of 4 QR codes created. 2 of them are dynamic and 2 of them are static. And it also says how many scans have been occurred on, I suppose, the dynamic codes, because you can log information from whenever they're scanned, I suppose. So here we have the list of dynamic codes. If I say list all, I have one for my Scotti-BYTE YouTube channel, and I have one for Google. And here it says the owner Scott. Here it says that there is no owner, and it's because it's set up for all people on the system. And I actually have a second user account. We'll get into that here shortly. And then we have the static QR codes, and if I list all of those, we've got one for the Rocket Chat, the Scotti-BYTE chat, and there's a QR code for it. And then here I have one for my PayPal. So, and then if I go down to users, I have a user account for myself, and I'm a super admin. And then I have a user account for my son-in-law, and he's an admin. So kind of the difference between the admin and the super admin is that the super admin can manage accounts and create new accounts, and then the admin can do anything they want as far as creating QR codes and as far as deleting any QR codes or modifying QR codes that are created in the, I guess you could say, major group or for all. So if we go down here and we play with adding a new one, we'll add a dynamic code. when you add a dynamic code, you can give it a website. So for example, I might want to give it something like https colon slash slash discussion dot Scotti-BYTE.com, and you can give it a file name, and I can say something like let's see, Scotti-BYTE discussion. The purpose of the file name is that when you download the QR code, that's the name of the file that it puts the QR code in. And then here, as far as the URL is concerned, it's going to be the URL of what self-hosted service or other service that you want to point it to. And then at the top, they have a choice of like foreground and background colors. So we could click on this. We could change our foreground color, which in this case is black. And we could change our background color, which in this case is white. And then we can change our precision. And I'll go ahead and make this a medium-sized code. And then I like to make the pixels about 300 or 400 I've discovered from playing around. And then down here at the bottom, it has owner. And so I'm going to make myself the owner. I'll submit that, and it goes ahead and creates a QR code for Scotti-BYTE discussion. And now if I download that and come up here and view that file, it simply brings up that QR code. And then we could print that out, have it printed on magnets or other types of things, or stickers, and use it in that way. The static codes are a little bit different. If I go to create a static code, I can put in anything that I want, of course. The first tab here is for text codes, so I could create a code that just had some text in it. The next one is for creating a QR code for an email, and you can have a send to with a subject and a message, and it would go ahead and send email. With somebody scanning that, it would fill in the email, and then they could take that email from there and decide to send it or whatever. Another one is a phone one that simply puts your phone number in there, and they can scan that in and they can see what your phone number is. Another one is one for setting up an SMS message to somebody. Another one is for WhatsApp. There's another for Skype. There's another for a GPS location where you could drop a pin to somebody with latitude and longitude of a location you might want them to go to. I don't know, let's say you were having a party at a park or something, and you put this QR code on a sign on the entrance to the park and people scanned it. It would guide them on their GPS to the exact location. And then another one is we've got a V card here where you can put in all your contact information that you would have in a typical contact V card. And then we have a calendar event. They've got those. Here's the bookmark, which is exactly what we have under the dynamic codes. And then we have the Wi-Fi where you can put in the SSID encryption and password for a Wi-Fi access point. And then we have a PayPal over here, and we have a Bitcoin also. So let's go take a look at PHP Dynamic QR Code Generator and see how we install this. PHP Dynamic QR Code is a Docker application, but I'm going to go ahead and install it in a LXD container. So I'm doing Lexi launch Ubuntu :22.04. I'm calling the name of the container QR code. I'm including the default profile so that it knows which pool to put the container into. And then I'm including also the bridge profile, which bridges back to my main LAN and is covered in my video LXD step by step. I'm setting boot.autostart equals to true, which means that when this LXD server boots, it also starts this container. And I'm setting security.nesting equal to true because it is my intent to nest this Docker application inside of the LXD container. So we go ahead and create this QR code container, and once it's created, we go ahead and do a LXC shell over to QR code. As a best practice, I'm doing an apt update with 2 ampersands and an apt upgrade -y, which will go ahead and perform the first command, and if it completes successfully, it'll perform the second command, and the -y indicates not to prompt me. Now we're going to go ahead and add a user. Add user Scott. Going to give Scott a password. And I'm going to put Scott in the sudo group with the user mod -a capital G sudo Scott. We're going to install Docker from the script on the Docker website. Install Docker Compose. Add my username Scott to the Docker group with the user mod -a capital G Docker Scott. And SU over to the Scott account. Check to see that Scott is in the Docker group by doing a groups command. And Scott is in both the sudo and Docker groups, which is good. Next, we do a git clone to make a copy of the project down here in my home folder. CD into the PHP dynamic QR code that the git just created. Do an ls of the folder. And we can do a nano on docker-compose.yml and take a look at it. And it has quite a few things out here. One of the things you're going to want to do is change your base URL to whatever your subdomain is, because we're going to want to host this out with Nginx Proxy Manager. So you're going to need a registered domain name. You'll need to go out to your domain name service provider and add a subdomain for something like, I don't know, qrcodes.mydomain.com, whatever your domain name is. And then you can go down here and change the database password. That's indicated there. You also want to change the MySQL root password and the MySQL password. And the only other thing you're going to want to do is, if you're installing this on an existing Docker server, you're going to want to change this first port 80 here to a free port. But in our case, since we're going to implement this inside a LXD container, we know that port 80 is completely free. So I'm not going to change this because this is just a demo, but you should be making those changes on your particular system before you go ahead and execute the Docker Compose. So in this folder, you'll also notice that there is a Docker file, and that Docker file describes how to build this application, and it builds it from components in this source directory. So consequently, what we need to have is we need to have a Docker Compose build command in order to create the application. So we do a Docker Compose build space dash dash no dash cache ampersand ampersand Docker Compose up dash D, and that begins to compose the entire application. In this case, it's actually building the app as we go. Now that the application is started, we should be able to do a Docker Compose PS. And we have the application up and running, which includes the application and also its database. We want to find out the IP address of our container, so we can do an if config. And if config doesn't work, you can go ahead and do a sudo apt install net-tools. But here we have device ETH0 being offered on 172.16.1.67, which is our LXD container, and that's the address that we're going to go to for our web interface. You will go to your web browser and you'll type in whatever the address was that you found for your Docker host or your LXD container. In my case, 172.16.1.67, and I enter it into my browser. Since I haven't changed from port 80 to any other port, I can simply enter the address and hit enter. I then get a username and a password. So you're going to want to type in superadmin as the username and superadmin as the password. Then you're going to go ahead and click sign in, and it will sign you in. We want to go over to users, and we want to click on our superadmin user, go over to this blue section here with the pen, click it, and you can change this to whatever you want. So for example, I could change this to Scott, and I could change this to some kind of a password, and there we go. And as I said, you can create a user as a superadmin or as an admin. When we're first creating this, we want to be the superadmin so we can create user accounts and so on. So what I did was I just changed that superadmin account to a Scott account, and I can come up here and go back to my logout. And at this point, I can go ahead and type in Scott, type in the password that I entered, and I'm logged in. In order to make our dynamic QR codes functional, they need to be able to reference this website whenever they're scanned. So we want to make this application web accessible. In order to do that, we're going to have to go into Nginx Proxy Manager and create a host. So in my case, my scheme is HTTP. I'm going down to my local address, which in this case, this is my production version, but I would be entering the address 172.16.1.67 if I wanted to host the one that we just created, and then port number 80. And the reason for that is because we didn't change that port in Docker Compose. If you did change that port, you'll want to make that change here as well. And then in addition to that, I set up block common exploits, and I also requested WebSocket support. Then I went over to the SSL screen and I clicked on the option to request a new certificate. In my case, it's for qrcodes.scotti-BYTE.com. And then I turn on the Force SSL and the HTTP/2 support. So this is one of the reasons why we need to have that domain name set up correctly inside of the Docker Compose file, and we need to match that with whatever we decide to do here as well. And that makes the application actually work for your dynamic QR codes. Something else mentioning is when you bring up the initial QR code generator, it puts in some sample codes for you. And if I do a list all, it has a whole series of these things out here. They're mainly as examples so you can see how they actually get created. So those are the dynamic codes. And then under the static codes, they also give you several of them. And these are just examples. You can go off and delete them and do whatever you want. Of course, once I saw how the program worked, I went out and deleted all the existing ones and created my own. So in summary, PHP Dynamic QR Code is an easy to deploy application providing complete control over your QR code creation and management. Multiple user accounts can be created to manage your QR codes, and QR codes have many uses beyond just simple links to websites. As of 2023, QR codes are used in both commercial tracking applications and convenience-oriented applications aimed at mobile device tagging. And owning your own self-hosted QR code management solution allows you control over all of your QR codes. Anyway, that's it for today. Please subscribe and like to the channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, and we'll see you next time.